Hello and welcome to the Field Engineer channel. My name is Caroline, and on this channel we discuss topics of interest to field engineers and field managers. I have with me today Danielle McGeary. Danielle is based in the US in Boston, and she has a BS and an MS in biomedical engineering, as well as a rich career in the healthcare and clinical engineering environment. Danielle is now Vice President of Healthcare Technology Management at the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation, AAMI, which is referred to as AAMI. Welcome, Danielle. The field engineer is happy to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I was honored when you all reached out and asked me to be part of this podcast. So thank you for having me.
That's very kind. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. So, first question really, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your early years? How did this all begin, this big journey in medical engineering?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a small town in southern Massachusetts, and my mom was an ER nurse growing up, and I have a lot of aunts and other people in the medical field. So I always had an interest in the medical field, but didn't want hands-on patient care. But I loved math and science. So, people were like, well, be an
Okay.
engineer. So it kind of, and right when I was applying to college, biomedical engineering was relatively a newer major. Long ago, people who wanted to focus in medical device would have to do electrical engineering or mechanical engineering here in the United States. And biomedical engineering often spawned from the electrical engineering programs at the universities that had them.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so
So,
so it was really a new area. You were one of the first wave of
yeah, I
people.
mean, at least, yeah, it was newer at the time. There were a lot of colleges in New England that did not even have the major. Actually, at the time, UMass, which was my state college, didn't have it. So I was able to go to UConn for cut tuition because they had a program in New England that said, if there's a major that you want to do that's not offered at any state university or college in your state, you can go to another state university in New England for cut
Oh,
cost. So that's kind of how
oh,
I ended up at UConn. Yeah.
okay. That was a very forward-thinking policy. I've never heard of that before. That's very positive. Um, so you enjoyed studying, did you? You knew that it was the right thing that you'd chosen.
Yes, I was really nervous going into engineering at first. If you kind of go back to my background, the town I grew up in was very poor, and our high school was actually on academic probation when I was applying to colleges. So I was really
Oh,
worried that I wouldn't get into an engineering program. And
mm,
I did get rejected from many, not because of my academics, but they felt that the high school that I came from, while I did well in school, that the programs may not have been as challenging. So they were worried I would get in as a freshman as an engineer and maybe just not be able to handle it.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but UConn gave me a shot. They accepted me. Tentatively. I was required to do an 8-week summer program my senior year and prove myself. It was for inner city students and people that came from lower income communities with high schools that did not have as robust academics. So I was accepted
Okay.
tentatively that I had to do that program for 8 weeks. It was chemistry, math, physics, and computer programming. I had to pass all of those courses over the summer.
Right.
Um, and I did. So I was able to get in. I was able to start in the fall. So I was very fortunate that UConn saw that I had potential, gave me an opportunity, even though maybe I didn't come from the best high school in the country.
Mm.
And, I just knew that I never wanted to let them down or take that opportunity for granted. So from that day forward, I was like, I'm going to succeed. And I really want to do something that really gives back to healthcare.
Okay, that's really positive, and it's because of course it's the high school you go to is it's not within your power, is it? just depends geographically where you are. So it's lovely that they did give you a chance, and then you had the summer to prove it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was a busy summer for you that year.
It was, but it was worth it now. So, at the time it was kind of like all my friends are enjoying their last summer and I'm like at an engineering camp, for lack of a better word, but it was really fun. And what was really nice was they gave us all of our first semester books as part of that program. So I didn't have to buy books my first semester.
Okay.
So there was a perk there too. So
Yeah. So it was a win-win for you and for the university. It worked both ways.
it was.
Okay, so you're studying, then how did you move into clinical engineering?
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
I was lucky. I got some internships over the summer throughout my freshman, sophomore, and junior years. They were more research and development focused. When you major
Okay.
in biomedical engineering, you often just think, well, I'm going to go into research and development for medical device companies, which is really needed and a great pathway too. But for me, I'm very extroverted. I like people. I just
Mhm.
couldn't see myself sitting in a cubicle or doing research. It just wasn't for me. So I was getting towards the end of college, my junior year, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I was the president of the Biomedical Engineering Society at
Mhm.
UConn, and this person by the name of Frank Painter was giving a presentation one night to the Biomedical Engineering Society about clinical engineering and how there happened to be a graduate program at UConn for folks who were interested in clinical engineering. So
Oh, wow.
he came
Mhm.
by, gave a presentation about how we can be engineers on the front lines of healthcare, working with the medical devices every day, with the clinicians, how every day is different and you get to learn a little bit about everything and really, improving safety, using our engineering skills to integrate
Mhm.
technology and improve safety. And from that moment on was like, that's what I want to do. Like I had no idea this existed, but this
Yeah.
is what I want to do. So I applied my senior year. It's a rigorous interview process because you not only have to get accepted into the program, you also have to get an internship. So there's
Oh, oh, right.
like 10 hospitals. Well, at the time when I did it, there was about 10 hospitals in New England that participated and took interns. So you had
Okay.
to go interview at each hospital and hopefully one of them would want you. So after you interviewed, it's kind of like when you go into medical school here in the United States, they do matching.
Yes. Yeah.
So they told me after I interviewed at all the hospitals, pick your top three, and then the hospitals were told to pick their top three candidates that they met with. So I had a one-to-one match with Hartford Hospital. That's where I started my career. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So it really all
Wow.
worked out.
So you just from one talk that took you down that path.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just was mesmerized and I'm so thankful for Frank Painter. If you don't know him, he taught the UConn Clinical Engineering grad program for
Ah,
must be 20
okay.
to 30 years. He recently retired. Carol Davis Smith took it over and it's still going, but the program's been in place since the 70s. It's gone through a couple different colleges in New England, but for at least the past 25 years, it's been at the University of Connecticut or UConn. So yeah,
Okay.
Frank just inspired me. So I'm
Uh,
forever in debt to him.
yeah. So talk about your first job then, because you'd had internships, but then you got your first job in a
Yep.
team, I guess. How big was the team and what did your job involve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say my first real job, well, I had internships. My first real job was the internship associated with the clinical engineering
Hmm.
graduate program at Hartford
Okay.
Hospital. So you're required to work 20 hours a week. You are paid and they waive your tuition, which is amazing. The hospital pays for your tuition.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, you end up working way more than 20 hours a week because they throw you in. They're making you run equipment acquisition and installation projects, and you need to be there meeting with the team. So you are thrown in as a full clinical engineer from day one, pretty much. So you end up working
Okay.
about 40 hours a week. Like I always say to any students that have the opportunity to intern, what you put in is what you get out of it. So the more you're there, the more you're going to learn.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found that during those 2 years, I had the opportunity to scrub into cases and see the equipment in motion working, understanding the clinical side of it.
Yeah.
And, once you get a real full-time job, you can't just be like, I'm going to scrub into a case today and watch this. You don't have that opportunity. So,
No.
I always say to students, take that time, even if it means coming in early, staying late, or working more than your 20-hour requirement. So that turned into a full-time job. Halfway through my second year, a clinical engineer who was working at Hartford Hospital at the time decided to retire really with no notice. He was just like, I'm done next week. I don't really know why, but so my boss came over to me and said, look, we want to keep you, but we can't hold this position for a year. So you can take it or leave it basically. And I just said to him, I would love it. I love this team. I want to stay, but I want to finish my master's degree and I have classes during the day. So they were very hospitable in the sense that they said school comes first. We want you to finish too. So you need to work 40 hours a week, but we understand if you need to leave on Wednesday to go to class for 3 hours, you can just make it up
Okay.
another time. So for a
Oh,
year I did that. I was a full-time student and worked full-time. And
that
then I
was
stayed there
Danielle.
another 6 years.
That was a lot of hours then that year.
Yeah,
As a
yes.
full-time student then. But what it must be really great to be learning about things and then actually seeing it in action and seeing the end users using it and getting the big picture all the time.
It was so
Mm,
exciting to really
yeah.
see it in motion and really apply. I think going to school while you're working is so different. And you're absolutely right because you're seeing it real time. And how you think about and solve problems is morphing and changing real time because, like, you're
Mhm.
having these deep discussions in class about, recalls or root cause analyses and different types of techniques to really solve problems in healthcare. And you're like, just doing that as you're learning, like you're bringing back a new skill. So it is really, really cool because I often felt in undergrad that like engineering as a degree was really abstract in the sense that like
Okay.
you learn
Yeah.
all these theories and physics and chemistry and math, but you're like, how will I use this? How does this apply? We're like, this was your hands on, real time learning, and then you're
Mm.
actually doing it at the same time.
Okay. And did that because a lot of field engineers talk about the fact that one balance is fixing something or installing something while you've got people talking to you or working around you or putting huge pressure on you to get the thing fixed.
Yes.
And what did you learn how to manage that during your time as a student and an intern?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get thrown to the wolves, and there's some high level people, and especially up here in Boston, we're very more ardent by nature. So then you have like a mad Bostonian doctor yelling at you on top of it. So, but yeah, no, I think the first thing is to really just take a step back. And what I've learned is that nothing's personal, right? I think when you're young and you're a
Okay.
student and you're first there, it's so easy to be like, why is he, why are they yelling at me like this? Or why is there immense pressure? And I think you
Yeah.
always need to take a step back and realize we are the path to the patient. If equipment is down in an OR, that means patients don't get access to their care. You could
Yes.
cancel cases, the throughput is going down. Our job is to make sure that every patient that comes through our doors goes home. Well, I mean, the majority of them,
Yes.
obviously,
Yes.
that can go home, that's the objective, goes home. So in doctors and nurses come into work every day and they perform miraculous work, right? But they couldn't do that with all of the medical instrumentation. We really are that path to the patient. And, you know, it's really high stress environments for everyone that works in a hospital. And it's being able just
Yeah.
to really take a step back. It's not to say that you won't have a bad day, but really
Mhm.
looking at what you're doing overall and realizing that we're contributing to a safe environment of care and we're helping patients so they can go back home to their loved ones. So I think if you always keep that in perspective, and it's
Yeah.
not to excuse poor behavior, at times, but I think at the end of the day, some of the clinicians, they just want to give their patients the best care, and not everyone handles stress differently. So I think it's just really being there, being that servant leader, and really just
Yes.
wanting to do the right thing. And like over time, you just realize, what, people, there is sometimes heated environments. you're very, like you said, people are coming at you through all different angles.
Yes,
You're getting a
yeah.
call from the ER that one thing's down, the OR, something else is down. You're running a project on the side. But I think that's what makes the job so exciting because no 2 days
Okay.
are the same, and you're constantly there to solve problems and help. And
And
at
to
the end of the day,
think on your
yeah,
feet and so on. So your
yes.
advice to anybody would be take that step back and think this isn't personal. This isn't about me as a person. It's because the environment is under pressure. There are patients waiting, etc. That's your advice, is it?
Absolutely. I think it's never lose track of your why and your mission and why you're
Okay.
there. And that'll help
Okay.
you get through the bad and stressful days for sure.
And also, you were part of a team, weren't you? So you had support from the rest of the team, I guess, if you were having a bad day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if we go back to Hartford Hospital, I was on a team of 30. So
Mm.
there were two clinical engineers, about 25 technicians, and a leadership team as well. So I
Okay.
was very well supported, very well trained. I was the only female in the department, which was really fun.
Okay.
And I just have to say, I am so grateful to Hartford Hospital and that team. I was able to shadow all the technicians and their different specialties, so I could just learn such a breadth of different types of equipment. And they were always so welcoming. And I definitely wouldn't be the engineer an HTM professional I am today without all of them and them taking me under their wing. So I
That,
feel indebted and I'm grateful. So for
that's
sure.
really positive. And you mentioned it was a 30-person team and you were the only woman. And
Yes.
was that okay? Because sometimes being in a minority has its challenges.
I mean, I never had an issue with it at all. Like I said, every single one of those technicians were so hospitable. They loved the interns. They wanted to pass their craft on. And I think when you come into
Okay.
HTM, you'll find that everyone wants to share their expertise with you. So I never really even thought about it at all, and you made a great point prior to the call that in hospitals, the majority of nurses are female. So when we're out on the floors working with installation, or a lot of the sales reps are females too.
Okay.
I would say that's about 50-50. So while in that department I was the only female, it wasn't like I would go days without seeing another woman at
Okay.
all. So, you do get exposure that way. But as for working in a really male dominated industry, I've only had a positive experience. And yeah, I'm
That's
just,
very
yeah.
good to hear. And what are you seeing then among the people you speak to in colleges and so on? Are more women coming into the industry? Are the percentages changing, do you think?
So back when we did in 2021, Amy actually did a survey because this was something I really wanted to know, right? We always
Right.
felt like there was a disparity, and you just look around
Mm.
the room. Like I have pictures when I first took this role at Amy in 2018, keynoting, and people would stand in the back of the room and send me a picture, and it was predominantly all men in the audience,
Okay.
and but it's hard with if like you can't manage what you can't measure. And the first thing starts with good data. Maybe that's just the
Yes.
engineer in me. So
No,
we
it's
did do
true.
it.
It's true.
And when you look at the HTM field as a whole, and this is looking at the people that do the technical work, so the field service engineers, the technicians in house, the clinical engineers, and the leadership around that, the field was 8% women in 2021. So that's not very high. But I
Mm.
have to say, since I've been at Amy, and we just released a new survey a few weeks ago to re-baseline that, I personally believe there's a lot more women coming into the field now.
Okay.
Um, but I don't have data to back that up, except that at conferences now, sometimes there is a line for the women's room to go to the bathroom, and that's never been an issue in the past. So
That's a very good piece of evidence.
it is. It might be so. It's not the most scientific piece of evidence, but
Well,
it does. I think there is a little bit of data there that's
yeah.
driven in that. That's rooted in that. So I'm
Oh,
really excited to see that for
yes.
sure.
And to see if it is moving upwards and so on. So, well, we've touched on it a little bit, but your work with Amy, can you explain a bit more about your role, in particularly about speaking at events and so on? For example, this week I think you were at Northeastern University. Why do you think it's so vital that you're out doing these sorts of things?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think there's to break this up, there's two reasons why I'm out in public facing. One is to promote the field. Amy and myself, we've hammered this home that we have a deficit of people coming into the HTM field in general, especially technicians. We've done a lot of work to help promote the field over the past 10 years at AAMI and the past 7 years that I've been here.
Okay.
But I'm a big advocate that I will never ask someone to do something that I will not do myself. So I'm out here preaching we need to get in front of students, college, high school, middle school. But I feel like I'd be somewhat of a fraud if I didn't go out and do that myself. So yes, I am involved with the New England Society of Clinical Engineering, and they set up outreach days at different colleges and universities across New England that we do speak at. So some of them are virtual and some of them are in person. So this week we were at Northeastern University. We talked to their Biomedical Engineering Club. And I thought that that was so full circle for me because back 15 years ago, I was sitting in that room learning about clinical engineering, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Frank Painter giving that presentation. So I'm hopeful that by doing this, we'll really spark an interest in those biomedical engineers that have no idea that this is an option. So it's so rewarding. It's one of my favorite things to do is really speak with the students. So we target the biomedical engineering programs because there's so many angles you can go into, and also like basic electronics at the 2-year programs as well, because they could go into photocopy repair or other types of electronic type, but we want to let them know that medical equipment is also a very exciting field and option for them, especially since there's 26 states in the country that don't have a degree in the United States specific to HTM or biomed. So these people aren't learning about it. And we need to ensure we have a very strong workforce for the future. So Amy and we've done a lot of work to really help promote the field. We've worked with the American School Guidance Counselors Association. We just launched a high school BMAT track with HOSA, which is the Health Students Occupation Association, the future of health professionals.
So you are doing a lot then. And I suppose for somebody who's studying any sort of engineering, if they do like being with people and they do want to put back into society, you're giving them a very good option with working in clinical engineering, for example.
Absolutely. It is so rewarding, and it's just a way to give back to healthcare and really contribute, to population health in general. Like I said, clinicians cannot do their jobs without the instrumentation, and that instrumentation and medical equipment needs to be there working and functional when they need it. And we do that behind the scenes. People don't often think what goes on behind the scenes in healthcare. They come in very vulnerable moments and it just all kind of works. But we really are those medical equipment doctors, whether we're field service or in-house, and we make it all work behind the scenes. We make healthcare work along with IT, and you could even, go into the cybersecurity of medical devices. And now the advent of AI, it just keeps changing and growing and getting more and more exciting.
So that as a career, it can include people who have slightly different interests to take slightly different paths and so on. So every time you speak, you're hoping that there's a Danielle in the audience who's having that light bulb moment and thinking, I will do this. I will do it.
And
go on.
Well, I was going to say, and that's absolutely why we do it, right? Not every student we talk to is going to go into healthcare technology management or clinical engineering. But even if we get one or two, we've done our job, right? Because you just need to light that spark, and hopefully they pass that spark on. And it's just a lasting, ongoing approach that you just keep paying it forward. And it's hard because we talk internally at AAMI, and a lot of my work specifically isn't really measurable, because I can go talk to a class of 10-year-olds right now and we won't even know the impact we've had for another 8 or 10 years, right? But you do it because it's the right thing to do, and you're just spreading awareness. Because even if none of those kids go into HTM, they at least know the field exists. And now you're spreading information and people are telling others about it. So So that's
I'd
why
be
we do
very
it.
interested, and you will probably never get this data, but I wonder if your 10-year-olds go home and talk to their parents about what they learned at school that day. And I wonder if sometimes there's a parent who's thinking, I need a career change. I wonder what I could do. And it gives them a light bulb moment. They think this is something maybe I could investigate. So maybe you're getting people into the industry that way, but I don't know how you'd find that data.
No, it's yeah, like it's unmeasurable. But you make a great point. I was at a Girl Scout day up in Vermont, and it was like a white and green mountains Girl Scout day for New Hampshire and Vermont Girl Scouts.
Okay.
And the amount of parents that came up to the table to ask us questions
Oh,
was really interesting. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of parents that say, wait, I have a technical skill, or maybe I work as a respiratory therapist, but I didn't realize there was this department in the hospital. So yes, you never know who you're going to touch and impact.
yes.
And it's thankless in the sense because you don't know that, but you walk away every day feeling like, you know what, I did that and therefore I made a difference, and you just let it propagate. It's just, you may never know, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I suppose you may know a few of them. Somebody may say to you in even 5 years, I heard you speak.
Yeah.
But no, it's you're right though, the phrase you used, pay it back, is a very important one, and it's very positive, isn't it? So I think we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything else you would like to share, Danielle? Or we've covered a lot of different topics.
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot about me. I don't really like always talking about myself. So I mean, there's really
Oh,
nothing else I'd
this
like to
interview is
share.
about you, so
Yeah.
it's about so people can understand what's it like to have a career in HTM. Anyway, Danielle, thank you very much for sharing your views and your experience with me today. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks again to all our viewers and listeners for your interest in our discussion. What did you think of our talk today with Danielle? What inspired you in your career in field engineering, whether it's medical or a different industry? See you next time, and please hit the subscribe button. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.